trans performer had full surgery? Like she was totally
she had
totally
a
transitioned. She did have a penis, and he was nonetheless canceled for not wanting to do the scene.
Yes. And it's an interesting debate because there were a lot of the social justice tweets of like trans women are women.
In the culture wars, there are no winners, just podcasters. Only a few are willing to risk their lives in the face of some of the dumbest ideas to have ever captured human civilization. Every week, we, Megan Daum and Sarah Hayter, humbly accept this mission to bring you conversations that are equal parts stunning, brave, and ethically sourced. Welcome to a special place in hell. And hello, Sarah, and welcome to our special guest, Jacky St. James. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Jacky is a producer and a director in the adult entertainment business, and she's actually quite a legendary figure in this industry. She was the darling of the adult film industry for a time. So it's a huge pleasure to have her with us because I know, Sarah, you're obsessed with porn.
Yes, I think that's the accurate way to describe it.
Yeah. And we should say that the reason I know Jacky is that she was a participant in our Unspeakeasy retreat in Los Angeles last month. And it just was one of these amazing things that kind of talking about the porn industry was not on the agenda, but she had a lot to say. So she ended up
leading the conversation.
Yes. And it was amazing. So anyway, so welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. I ran home and told Sarah about you, and she said we have to get you on the podcast. So here you are.
Yeah. I'm so glad you agreed to do this. And I hope it doesn't go badly for you. I think
she's a director.
It won't.
She's in charge of us.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
So, well, I guess we should just start from the beginning. How did you get into this? Were you trying to like make art films in college and couldn't pay the rent?
No, I had moved to LA to be an actor and quickly learned that was not going to happen for me. So I took a job back in corporate America, and a lot of my guy friends, I've consumed porn since I was 18. So we would trade links to clips. And one of my guy friends sent me a link. He's a director of photography in Hollywood. And he said, "You're not going to believe that porn is shooting stuff like this." And it was a higher end production with a script and good looking guys. And so when I researched the company, they were looking for screenwriters. I love writing. And there was a contest. So I was like, I'm going to just do it. And so I submitted for the contest and ended up winning the contest. Now, that's not really a big deal because I read the other submissions and they were absolutely horrible. But I did win, and they produced my first script, which went on to win a screenplay award at ABN my first year. It was called Dear Abby. And after that, they asked me to write more and more. And then eventually it evolved into, we want you to direct. And I quit my corporate job and I went full time in porn.
Okay. And you're considered a feminist adult filmmaker. What does that mean?
What does that mean? That's such a loaded question because the word feminist now, it has so many different meanings.
Or pro-woman, but this is a pro-woman kind of approach that you take.
So I always make sure that everyone is aware of what's happening, which seems very shocking that wouldn't happen, but they know who they're working with, they consent to who they're working with, they know the material that they're doing. So if they're playing like a stepdaughter, which I don't do anymore, but they're aware of that. That the man and the woman's connection is every bit as important as seeing just the woman, which is what you traditionally see in a lot of adult films. We show the connection between the man and the woman.
Mm-hmm. The connection, connection in what way? Like literally, or in terms of the relationship in the story?
Well, so if I'm doing something that has a story, that you see the eye contact between the two actors. You know, a lot of times you see this headless torso of a man thrusting himself into a woman, and you don't see a lot of the faces looking at each other into each other's eyes, or the kissing. There's not a lot of kissing in traditional porn. We do a lot of the kissing, we do a lot of the foreplay, we do a lot of clit play. So there's just a lot of focus on female pleasure, but also the connection that occurs during sex, which is the eye contact, the kissing, those kinds.
Okay. And are your films designed to be watched by women? Are women the majority of your viewers?
No, it's mostly men.
Okay.
But you know, it's hard to say because I don't really do the analysis on the demographics. That would be the companies that I'm shooting for. But the fan mail I get is from a lot of couples. So men that want to get their wives into watching porn. I mean, I do have female fans, but I think it's just across the board. It's mostly couples.
Okay. And what are what are the names of some of your sort of most popular, best known films?
I mean, the most popular one I ever did was called The Submission of Emma Marx. And it was done, gosh, a very long time ago in response to 50 Shades of Grey and all the things that they did wrong. And then I've done Love in the Digital Age. I've done a movie called Torn about infidelity. Those are more, I would say those are more long form stories. So they're like 30 pages, which is long in porn.
How many minutes is that?
Well, it's 30 minutes of dialogue. If it's 30 pages, it's 30 minutes of dialogue. And each sex scene is about 20 minutes. So it's about 90 minutes, give or take.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. And then they get cut and then they get put on for softcore on like Showtime or things like that.
I see.
Okay.
All right.
So how rare are you, like how common is it to get a female director in the porn industry?
Not uncommon at all. In fact, the females are kind of dominating the industry right now. When I first started, that wasn't the case. There were maybe a handful of women that were doing really great stuff. But now, I don't want to say it's trendy, but it is kind of trendy and it's popular to have a woman behind the camera. So a lot of performers have turned into directors. And then we have a few, I think maybe one other female, well, maybe one or two others that are like me that never performed and are directing. But at AVN the last year, which is our awards show, half of the directors that were nominated were women.
Oh, wow.
So,
Wow.
yeah, there's a lot of women in the business. I think the misconception is that people assume it's men because they're consuming porn on tube sites. So they just assume it's all done by men, but it's really not. There's tons of women at very, very, very big companies.
The stuff we see on a tube site, that might be more produced by men, and that's what's leading to the misconception. So I was just wondering, I had never even considered that.
It's not that it's more produced by men because it's a tube site, so everything uploaded is everybody's stuff. But it's rebranded a lot of times. So when I first started in porn, the tube sites crippled our industry. People's salaries were cut in half. Businesses were struggling to stay afloat because they were basically focusing on the DVD business. Then with the, advent of all of these tube sites, eventually the porn industry had to surrender to them and use them as a way to stay afloat. So what that means is they're using the tube sites to drive traffic to their respective companies. But when I say it's different on the tube sites is that I can have a film of mine uploaded by a user and then called something completely different. Like maybe I think I had mentioned before, I had a movie and it was called Boss Lady. And it was all these women that kind of were taking advantage of the male employee. But then somebody took a scene from that movie, uploaded it and said, big titted bimbo fucked by her boss. Well,
oh God,
it wasn't the boss, but that's how they wanted to brand it to get a click. So that's what I'm saying, is that there's a lot of rebranding happening if it wasn't uploaded by the studio itself. If the studio uploads it, it will be correct. But
Mm-hmm.
if some random fan or whoever is uploading it, they can call it whatever they want to get clicks, to get their own traffic.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Wow. And you've been in this business since 2011, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, well, before we get into, sort of the more kind of cultural angles, can you just kind of walk us through what happens on a porn set? Like, I mean, people come in, first of all, you've cast the actors, right? So, I mean,
Yeah.
what is the process sort of start to finish? You have a script, you cast the actors. Do you know who you want sort of pretty much ahead of time, or what's the audition process like?
Well, so I don't audition people anymore. But if I am doing a scripted scene, and I don't always do scripted scenes, but when I do, I've been in the business long enough to know what people are capable of doing in terms of acting or memorizing lines. So I'll go to the studio and say, these are the two people I want in this. And then we decide if they're the right people. And that can depend on, obviously, looks. It can be social media presence, whether they're that popular, whether they're going to make money. Then the girl will show up first. She goes into makeup, and the crew starts lighting the room or getting the rooms ready. Then the girl will go into what we call pretty girls, which is modeling pictures. And then at that point, the guy will have arrived, and then we start going through the dialogue. They'll rehearse, and usually, depending on the day, they'll do the dialogue before the sex. It just depends. They'll do sex stills before the scene, which is where we plot out kind of what positions we want them in, and we discuss where the cum shot will be. So, and then we take a fake cum shot with Cetaphil. So if you use Cetaphil on your face, we use it. That is the number one lotion we use as a cum.
Wait, sorry, what is it? I didn't.
Cetaphil.
It's called
Cetaphil.
Oh, sorry, you cut out there. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Cetaphil,
Good
and we
to
just
know.
Yeah.
put it on the girl. I prefer that it's not on her face, so usually it's on her stomach or her breast. But it's a very male thing to have the load on her face.
Right.
Yeah.
Some girls will ask for that, and that's fine. And maybe it's because they want to make their fans happy. But I always choose not to, unless the
Mhm.
girl is adamant. Then they shoot the scene, and that's the day. It usually takes between 6 to 9 hours, depending on
Oh my God.
Wow.
not the actual sex. The sex
Yeah.
takes
Well, yeah.
30
But
minutes.
that's
Still a
actually
long
pretty
day.
fast.
I mean,
But that's fast for one. You can make it. So you basically make the whole thing in one day.
Yeah. Not 30 pages. This is not the 30-page thing I was talking about,
Right.
because right now I'm doing vignettes, so it's usually they're like 5 to 7 pages. Yeah.
Right. And so what kind of lives do these actors have? I mean, I'm assuming you know them well, you're probably
Mhm.
friends with a lot of them. Like
Mhm.
what has led them into this world, and what are their lives like, just kind of on a quotidian basis?
Oh my gosh. I mean, everyone's lives are really unique and different. A lot of people came from poverty, so this was sort of their way out and making a lot of money. People that start later, um, like the women usually that start later, had careers and maybe were swingers and just realized that they wanted to make money from having sex. They're usually very, very professional and grounded and very good with money. And as far as the guys, I mean, I think the younger guys are like, oh yeah, it'll be cool to fuck money, but to fuck women for money. But I think male performers quickly learn how hard it is. There's very few that make it and can be successful. It's a very hard job for the guy, for sure.
Mm.
But all
Mhm.
different walks of life. I mean, there's people that have master's degrees, and then there's people that turned 18, had watched porn their whole high school career and want to be a porn star.
So, okay, so what we've talked a lot about the business of this. I mean, I know you and I talked about that. Pornhub obviously changed things tremendously in terms of like the way people make adult films and certainly consume them. There's also the OnlyFans phenomenon.
Yes.
Can you just sort of talk broadly about what you think porn has done to the culture? I mean, a lot has changed since 2011, not to mention since, the Playboy era. I mean, what do you think of where we're at right now?
I mean, I think, I don't want to make this about bashing the tube sites, but I will say that I think the accessibility of porn has really impacted sex education. And, I've said this before, I don't believe it's the porn industry's job to educate anyone on sex. We are just porn. We're not sex educators. But because it's accessible, I mean, people are curious. I mean, I remember wanting to look at a nudie mag when I was a kid and how exciting it was. Well, now kids don't just look at a nudie mag. They're looking at actual porn and they're learning how to have sex based on porn that they're watching. And unfortunately, if they're going to a tube site, they're not watching the most, the best scenes that are out there. They're looking at shock value. They're looking at things on the homepage, and those are usually the most shocking scenes or with the most popular girls. So I think there is statistically, I think more teenage boys have erectile dysfunction than ever before. And that used to be, an ailment of men in their 50s and older. And now we're seeing high schoolers with ED. That's definitely related to porn, I would say. I mean, I haven't done the research, but I'm assuming that's what it is. And I think that's very problematic for people.
They'll say so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those young guys will say, I mean, they will self-identify as like, I am a porn addict.
Yeah.
And I have, erectile dysfunction. And I saw porn for the first time when I was 5 or something crazy. And I've been addicted since I was 12. I mean, it's just pretty outrageous.
Yeah. That's why you're seeing states like, I think it was Texas and Utah, have implemented a requirement for ID to access the tube sites.
And do you know how that's going?
I don't. And it's sort of a double-edged sword because it's like, it's such an invasion of privacy. I understand what they're trying to do to protect people, but yeah, it's a double-edged.
Yeah, I think it's people will find ways around it like day 2. I can't imagine it will really prevent anything major, but maybe saves a few souls, I guess. I don't know how they're I just don't think things like this work when it comes to technology just banning. We have to find another way of thinking about things. I've but it's interesting that so many people have started to watch porn from when they were very, very, very young.
Yeah.
And, then their tastes begin to evolve as they get older. Do you find that what the customer seems to want now is very different in what they wanted when you were first like coming up, or do you think it's just like an extreme version of the same sort of thing?
The only thing that I have really seen take off and then thank God die was the faux cest scenarios, which everyone in porn hated doing. A lot of the girls really hated it, sometimes because of past traumas and things like that. But that was extremely popular. And it's sort of fading now. I don't know a lot of people that are shooting it as much anymore, which is great. But do I think that it's changed? No. I mean, I think there's this thing called Rule 34, which is if you can think it exists in porn. So I think we all just cater to a variety of fetishes based on what our studios are demanding or what we're trying to sell. So I'm always going to just go towards the female and couples markets, or female friendly, I guess you could say. But then the people that are doing the more hardcore stuff are probably always going to be doing that.
Well, how worried are you about all this porn use? I mean, we talk about it a lot here. It's certainly out in the discourse. There's a lot of hand wringing about it. Do you think people are being hysterical? Do you think that they're talking about the wrong things? Like, how do you think we should be approaching this?
I mean, I really do think it's the responsibility of parents to parent their children, and that
Mm,
includes educating them about porn, because porn's a
mm,
reality now, and that should be part of the discussion. Um, I think that the common misconception among civilians, which are people that are not in porn, that's what we refer to the non-porn people as, you guys are civilian, is that civilians tend to have very incorrect assumptions about porn, sex workers. Um, so for me, I think the problem lies with the civilians and not necessarily the pornographers.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah. Talk about OnlyFans. So, how many of the actors that you work with, actresses, assume most of them are women, are also doing OnlyFans, and what does that mean for their business and for your business?
So OnlyFans kind of took off during COVID, because
Mm,
we weren't able to shoot. You can't stay 6 feet apart
yeah.
when you're having sex. So that's when a lot of women and men started their OnlyFans and quickly learned that they could make a lot of money. I mean, there's some people that were
Mhm.
making 1 million a week. And this is,
Wow.
a girl that
Wow.
I worked with, Riley Reed. I mean, she's a multimillionaire now. She bought her home with cash, but she took off, and a lot of people have. So the advantage is that the performers now have a sense of agency. They have a sense of control over their careers.
Mhm,
The problem is that for me, it's very difficult to get people to show up, because why would you show up and work for $1,200 for me when you could stay home and make more than that just in bed? And
mhm,
so
mhm.
it's harder to get people if they're making decent money to show up, and want to be
Yeah.
there. Now,
Yeah.
sometimes they need us because they need the production companies to build a following that will allow them to, get the fans so that they are making the $100,000 a month or whatever they're making. Um, but I will say I'm noticing this recently. There's a lot of STD problems, and I think
Mm, mm,
when you're putting the responsibility in the performer's hands, if that performer does not have a producer's mindset to check a test and make sure everyone's safe, issues can happen. Also, it can be more unsafe. Like, while you might be choosing to work with somebody, you're working with somebody at your house. You don't have a crew around to protect you if something goes wrong. Now, I'm not saying that every porn production company is awesome and is going to do that. You would hope, but there can be dangerous things that can happen when you just have two people showing up at a house. And there have been some
mhm,
accusations of people for things that have happened, and then there's been, fake tests and things like that. Whereas a producer, we can log in and check the test, we can ensure everybody's safe. So it's, there it again, another double-edged sword.
mhm, mhm.
How does it work with the STD testing? How often do they test, and what do they test for? And what happens if somebody comes up positive? Are they out of the business forever?
No,
How
I
does
mean,
that
well,
go?
positive for what?
Mhm.
I mean, everyone's going to be positive for something at some point. Obviously, we don't want anybody to get test positive, but we're testing, on this on the boy girl side, because on the gay side it's different. There are HIV positive performers that work with other HIV positive performers, but on the, I guess, what we would call straight side, we test for the whole gamut of STDs with the exception of herpes, um, and with the exception of HPV, because I think most people have both of those. Um, and if somebody tests positive, they go into quarantine, and then we have measures in place where we inform the other performers that they've worked with, and so on and so forth. Occasionally, if it gets out of hand, we'll shut down the industry for a period of time so that everybody can kind of get treated and safe and everything's
Oh.
good before they go back to work. And there've been a few shutdowns. The one common misconception as well is about HIV transmission. There has not been an HIV transmission on set since 2004, and that was when they implemented the testing.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah, there was an incident that I believe was in 2013 where a performer contracted HIV and then did a ton of interviews bashing the industry, talking about how it was unsafe. But the male performer she worked with never ended up testing positive. He's still in the business. He's test negative. She was a drug user, an IV drug user, and her boyfriend was also, I think, a prostitute. So there was a lot of risky behavior happening in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think a lot of that's where the measure for condom use, I think it was Prop 60,
Mm-hmm.
came into effect.
Is OnlyFans? I mean, the other thing I wonder about it is that yes, like tube sites or just porn in general might not be like a place that attracts a lot of like female consumers, but OnlyFans seems to be even more difficult for females to necessarily penetrate. I mean, I shouldn't have used that, but I meant like I mean, are you going to sign up to be a fan and pay a monthly fee as a girl? I don't think you are, right? Like, I don't know if that's what something.
I don't, that's an interesting point. I never really thought about that. I mean, I don't know if it's, and again, I don't have the numbers, but I don't think it's an inherently female behavior to sign up and chat with a porn performer, which is what a lot of these guys are doing, is they're going in and having that one-on-one experience with the girl that they wouldn't have just watching a porn movie.
Mm-hmm.
So they get that kind of girlfriend experience, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when we talked at the Unspeakeasy, you spoke a lot about consent and how that is such a huge value in the porn industry. Can you say a little more about that?
Yeah, I mean, every producer is different. I've always been hypersensitive because I always imagine if it was me in that situation, I would want to know everything. So for me, the consent begins when the booking happens. And what I usually do is I reach out to the female performer and ask them who they want to work with, who they like. And if they say, well, anyone, I'll throw a few names at them so that they're actually saying, yes, I'm good with this person. So that we've already, jumped over one hurdle. They know who they're working with. They like that person, or they trust that person, or they feel good with that person. And then when you get to set, they also, before you get to set, they also should know what is being required of them. So you're going to be having boy-girl sex, vaginal sex, anal, whatever it is. This is the kind of sex that we're paying you to have. And there will be a script or there won't. And if there is a script, hey, you're playing a stepdaughter. Are you comfortable with that? Some people aren't. And then from there, when you get to set, you go through. I mean, a lot of the people, and this is another thing that a lot of people don't know. I mean, these people have worked with each other quite a few times. So it's not as common that I'm working with people that have never worked together. So they already kind of know each other. But they'll still go through something like, oh, I have hair extensions today. Don't pull my hair, whatever it is. But even things like that are important because then everyone is on the same page and feels comfortable when they're having sex.
Okay. But are they allowed to say no at any point during the shoot? Like if they initially agreed to perform a certain act, what happens if in the moment they say, "Oh, actually no, I'm not comfortable with this."
Then we don't continue.
How often does that happen?
Never. And I mean, I will say, and I mean, I think it's female intuition. I mean, you can kind of see if something is going sideways. I've only seen that happen twice, and I've checked in with the performer, and again, I can't force them to say, no, I don't want to continue, or yes, I want to continue. So I just can only go off of what they're saying. If they say they're fine, and it's not been anything that was like so glaringly obvious. If it was glaringly obvious, if the girl was crying or something, I mean, obviously I'm going to call the scene. Call the scene meaning cut and stop. But that's never happened. I just had one where the two people were in a fight prior to the scene. And so it was, this is what happens. This is their job. Their job is to have sex. And if they have an issue with that person that day, you have to think that's a hard day at work when you're having sex with somebody you're mad at. So, but
Maybe
they
you can't
wanted,
stay mad. That's how you
That's right.
resolve.
That's a good genre, actually. The hate fuck. I mean,
sex, yeah,
that's classic. Yeah.
yeah.
How much leeway do they have in terms of how they're going to go about it? Like, are there specific things where you're like, you have to do X or Y or Z, or can they just be like spontaneous? Like the hair pulling thing you said, like, is that a directed thing, or is that something that just happens, or you just agree upon it, or don't?
How much improvisation is there?
For me, I love it when they do whatever they want. So I always tell them. So the only time that I tend to script them is during the stills. So because you want that really hot position as a thumbnail. But when they actually are, and one of the positions that looks really great in a picture that is not fun is reverse cowgirl, which is where the girl's on top of the guy facing forward. It's not that comfortable. It's hard for the girl to do. Look at Megan's like,
wait,
so
facing forward?
Like, so the guy's laying back and the girl's on top of him, but her back is to his face.
Right. She's She's facing the other direction.
That's reverse cowgirl. Most of the girls hate it, but for pictures it looks amazing because you can see the body of the girl. But so for pictures, sometimes I'll have them do that. But during the scene, I say, do whatever you want. Come wherever you want, but please don't say face if you really don't want face. Because sometimes, like I said, the girl will say face. I'm like, is that really what you want? Maybe it is. I mean, who am I to judge? But I do think it's a very like male thing to see that. And I don't want the girl to say face if she really doesn't want that. Some girls, the MILFs will often be very honest and say, fuck no, I don't want it on my face.
Yeah, so the MILFs, I feel like I was reading recently about a woman who had gotten into the porn industry at an older age. I think she was well into her 40s. How common is that?
I mean, 40s is a little late to start in porn, but I mean, there's quite a few women that started in their late 20s, early 30s, which is MILF category. Sorry to say.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right.
You have big boobs and that kind of thing. I mean, you're usually going to be, you're not getting cast as the cheerleader. You're getting cast as the mom or the stepmom. But I mean, the MILFs, again, like I said, a lot of them started late. I mean, it's really interesting now that I think about it, because I don't really think there's a lot of MILFs that began as a young girl and then evolved into a MILF. Most of them started later and came from corporate jobs or regular jobs and now are working in porn. And they're very professional and very stable women.
Wow. And how long can they stay in the business?
I mean, as long as there's somebody there to shoot them. So I think, the turnover for performers, I mean, you see a lot of, I mean, I've seen so many people come and go. I mean, the longevity in the business, it's hard on your body and I'm sure on your mental state. I mean, I can't speak to that. I'm not a sex worker, but I'm sure it's very difficult for a 20-year-old to be working for 40-something adults and having sex every day. I imagine that's hard.
But like, what's the oldest, say, female porn actor that you can think of?
Well, Nina Hartley, but I think she's in her 60s.
Okay. She's still performing?
I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, I know that one of my production assistants worked on a scene which was GILF porn, and the woman was like, had a replaced hip.
GILF?
Grandmas, I'd like to. Yeah. replaced hip? Like that, was that written into the scene, or was
Oh
that
No,
my
part of
she
it?
god! And
actually did
somebody
have
had
She
to
actually had,
fall, and they do help.
yes, help me, I can't get
I
up.
can't get up.
And then the pizza man comes
a piece of man
and picks you up off the floor. Okay, what's the oldest male actor you can think of?
It was Steve Holmes, who was kind of canceled from the industry, and he is gone now, but I think he was 60. That he was working regularly. I'm sure there's, I mean, obviously there's older people, but Steve Holmes was, a very popular name in our business at the time, and worked a ton.
So for the men, like over the course of the day, how many times do they actually have to ejaculate? Is it just the one money shot, like
Once.
one take kind of thing, or like
Yeah.
how would they have the stamina to
Well,
keep
I
doing
mean,
this?
it's the thing when people are like, talk about it being an easy job. And I mean, I know people like to make porn the punchline of every joke, but I mean, it is a difficult job for the guys. And I think that they don't get enough credit. They, I mean, imagine having to stay hard in a house with no air conditioning, with a crew that just wants you to ejaculate, with a girl that maybe hates you or doesn't like you, or maybe doesn't smell that great. I mean, there's a whole host of things that the guys are dealing with. And the guys also have to make sure that the girl is opened up correctly to camera and positioned correctly while still maintaining an erection. So this is an interesting thing that has sort of arose in the last 2 years, is that more male performers than ever are shooting up their penises
Mm.
with Caberjack, which is, I believe, illegal.
Mm.
What is that exactly?
So it's a shot that you inject into your penis, and I guess it constricts the blood vessels, or I don't know how it works, but they shoot it into the penis to stay hard, and then afterwards they shoot another shot into their penis so that it goes limp. Now, I was of the days where it was just Viagra, and many of the guys only took it if they thought they were going to need it. Like it was, I don't really like this girl, I'll take it. And some of them will take half a pill or whatever. But like now it's becoming more common that guys are shooting their penises up. And the problem with this, and it's not because they have an issue with staying hard, it's that they don't want to lose an opportunity if they aren't hard. So that's the guarantee.
Wow.
And I think about the long-term effects, because there's been a few performers in the business that had to resort to that after a very long time in the business. And now they had to get surgical, your face.
I just don't like.
Surgical implants.
It's like wherever that's gonna go, I don't
Wow.
like it.
Yeah.
Does it get
Wow.
harder for them over time? Like, I mean, I would imagine if you've been a porn actor, like from the guy's perspective for several years, you've seen it all, done it all. Is it like increasingly harder to stay erect for as long as you need?
I think, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I think that, it's hard to say because I'm not a male performer. What I've seen, is that what the guys, the ones that are very cognizant of their bodies and the impact of having sex this frequently, is that some of the more seasoned guys that I've known for the last decade will dial back the number of scenes they're doing to allow their bodies time to kind of become sensitized again. Um, so a lot of them say, I'm only doing 2 scenes a week as opposed to 6, 7 scenes a week. I mean, some guys are doing 3 scenes a day. So it's just, yeah. I mean, there's definitely potentially long-term damage there, but I think they just have to be aware of their bodies. I think that the long-term damage for the people shooting up is going to be a huge problem for them.
So of course we have to find the culture war angle here. How has wokeness or cancel culture or these things affected the porn industry?
Oh man. I mean, I think it's made it very scary for producers, even producers like myself. I used to never be afraid. Um, ever. I mean, I know I'm an
Mhm.
ethical person. I know I'm going to look out for the best interest of everyone on set, the crew and the talent. Um, but we're dealing with a lot of very young people. We're dealing with people that grew up on social media. And so, and we're dealing with people who exist for clicks and popularity.
Mm.
So canceling somebody can get you clicks, it can get you attention. The first time I noticed it was during Me Too. There were a lot of guys being called out as
Mhm.
rapists, as whatever, don't work with him for this. Um, the second time was George Floyd, black squares, who had one, who didn't. And then now it's Palestine, of course.
Yeah.
Which is so it's so strange to me because I mean, we had a one girl post a picture of herself. She's Jewish and she was wearing an Israeli flag, and another girl attacked her and did vomit faces. I mean, we're dealing with very young people who are I think Megan, you've mentioned this before too, where it's like women's way of fighting is just this usually verbal
Yeah.
attacks. And
Yeah.
so because we're a lot of these performers are women and they're also extremely young. I mean, you're talking 18, 20 somethings that public fighting is accepted and encouraged, which is
Mhm.
really unfortunate.
So are they seeing this as a social justice issue? Are they seeing sex work as like a kind of progressive expression? Like, because there's kind of like two sorts of sex workers. We think of like the old school, like, stripper, porn
Mhm.
actor, this kind of thing. But then there's like, back when they were called prostitutes and strippers, right? And now there's like sex worker has this, this valence of, um, it's a progressive thing, or you might have like green hair and be a sex worker, or you might have, or it's like you're in the sort of the alternate scene,
Yeah,
so are people in that world winding up in films like yours, or is it kind of like a separate thing?
I am very I try to stay off social media since COVID just because of how
Mhm.
absolutely detrimental it was to people's mental health and the attacks that were so unfounded. Um, I don't know because I know with George Floyd, a lot of people went to the protests. I don't know whether people are protesting in favor of Palestine. I don't really know. Do I think that they're social justice warriors? Maybe some of them, but I mean, I think again, it's sort of like, let me just be on the next big thing so I can get attention.
Mm.
And I mean, I'm not saying that that's the case with all performers, but I do think it's odd that somebody who is working in sex work wants that to be on their platform when why aren't they selling what everyone's here for? I mean, they're beautiful, smart, sexy women, but do we have to make it about a political issue? And maybe that is simply because political issues get attention. They're trending. Okay, Palestine's trending, so I'm going to post about how I love Palestine. Whatever it is.
Mhm.
Do I believe that they actually are social justice warriors? I really don't. I don't know. I have no idea. Um, I would venture to say probably not. But I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen any of these people donating to causes, but maybe they are.
So what about the gender stuff? I mean, does transgender content come in, like, does that fall under a totally different category? Is there different people making that, or do you work with transgender actors, or how does that play out?
I haven't worked with transgender actors yet. There's, most people specialize in whatever they're specializing in, and whether it's lesbian or, gay or straight or whatever it is. So, with transgender directors, and I'm trying to think if there are actually any transgender directors. I'm saying like
Mm,
people who are directed in
right.
transgender scenes, but I actually don't know. And I think that would be important to have them representing uh their own group. But no, there's studios that have certain lines, and it's a transgender line, or now they're doing this very bizarre thing. It's called I'm gonna look, I made a note on this. Futanari? I don't know if I'm where it's female performers
Mhm.
wearing prosthetic penises. So they appear to be trans, but they're not. But it's this weird new thing that's kind of becoming popular. Look at your face.
Like trying not to Google what.
So it's
what in the middle of
don't
a
Google
recording.
that. That you'll never go back. What? So uh
So it's sort of like, I don't know if it's appropriating because it's the one of the studios that's doing it is, very they do a lot of different films, and they do a lot of trans films, but now they're doing this Futanari thing, and it seems like it would be appropriating
Oh, it's
trans.
like blackface, but for
Yeah, I mean,
right.
it's an interesting thing from like, okay,
Man crotch. Yeah.
yeah.
It's man
yeah,
face. Well, but okay, but I mean, but it kind of makes sense because people are into this,
absolutely.
fluidity, right? So you have a lot of people LARPing and, doing all kinds of things. But like in terms of so say you have a performer who, and I mean this not necessarily you, anybody, like if there's a scene and one of the performers is a biological man but is playing the part of a woman, and say it's supposed to be like a girl on girl scene, is that something that the other actor performer would have consented to? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, we had a situation like that with a male performer who showed up to set thinking that he would be working with a female assigned at birth. I'm using
A
that term.
biological female. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. A
Mhm.
biological female. And he had actually, and I don't know the aftermath part of this, but I will tell you. So he had apparently been text or tweeting, DMing her, and there weren't a lot of pictures that would make it obvious to him. And he didn't know who she was. Well, she was a very established trans performer, very well known in the trans community, and he didn't know. And so he shows up to set and immediately realizes, oh, this is a trans woman, and he said, I don't want to do the scene. Now, there's debate over how he handled it, but he was basically canceled after that. And um, now I don't know whether he was canceled because he said some awful things, but he still, in my opinion, is completely entitled to say no to anyone. I mean, you don't like somebody's breath. I mean, there's reasons why people say no all the time, and they should be allowed to, because consent is the number one thing. And if he felt uncomfortable and a director was to force him to do that scene, I mean, it's completely unethical. He can
Mhm.
say no for whatever reason, but I feel like we've kind of moved into this weird place in the industry where, oh, no, you have to say yes to that because otherwise you're a bigot. But he felt uncomfortable for whatever reasons. I don't know what his reasons were, but he didn't want to do it.
Mhm.
And he didn't do it, but then was canceled for it.
And by canceled, does that mean permanently canceled? Is
Yes.
he's not
I
working
don't I
anymore?
believe I mean, a lot of people came to the trans woman's defense, and a lot of people he had worked with. I didn't work with him that often. So it wasn't really an issue for me, but like a lot of producers were like, I will never hire you again, and publicly admonished him, and he has since moved away. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Um, I mean, I don't know how much this matters, but was the trans performer had full surgery? Like she was totally
She had
totally
a penis.
transitioned. She did have a penis,
Mm.
Mhm.
and he
Breast.
was nonetheless canceled for not wanting to do the scene.
Yes.
Mm.
And, it's an interesting debate because, there were a lot of the social justice tweets of like, trans women are women, but then it becomes this interesting debate for him because he's like, well, I don't want to have sex if there's a penis involved. But the argument was, but it's still a woman, so you should. And
Mhm.
and my argument is, regardless of semantics or whatever you want to call, somebody's gender, I still believe that you should be able to say no if you're uncomfortable with something. They can think he's a bigot, that's fine. Whatever they want to think is fine, and people are going to think that. But when a performer says, I don't feel comfortable working with this person, we should never force that person to do that scene. Also, he should have been aware, and I don't know if that was the responsibility of the director to say, "Hey, it's a trans woman," or he should have done his research. I don't really know where that responsibility lies, but
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Mhm.
Wow.
that was a really, really interesting situation that came up and kind of unfortunate all the way around.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Do people say, I mean, I guess it would be pretty easy to just camouflage this, but say, like, forget about gender. What if I was just saying, I'm never going to have sex with like an Asian guy.
Mhm.
And
Oh
that's
yeah.
I mean, I guess I'm just thinking if that was actually true and you're giving me, hey, here's how many guys you can work with, which one do you like? I could just easily avoid the situation.
Yeah. I mean, and
Um,
that's I tend to, there's different reasons. I mean, like there used to be this idea that it was just black performers that had the largest penises, but that's actually not true. I mean, everyone has a big penis.
Mm.
And we have some black performers that don't have gigantic penises in our business.
mm,
So that, you know, uh, so if somebody doesn't want to work with somebody for that reason, I I don't even put them in the position of having to say something uncomfortable like that. I give them a wide variety of people, and they can tell me who they wanna work
mhm, mhm,
with. But I mean, again, the industry has really changed in that it used to be the girls would demand more money to work with a black performer. That
mm,
was normal, and
mhm,
it's shocking to think about that, how drastically the culture has changed since that.
yeah.
Uh, that was like a big deal.
Mhm.
And sorry, was it because of size of penis, or was it just a racial thing?
So I initially, and maybe this is naively, because I'm coming from corporate America where, you just don't, we never would have these conversations, but I mean,
You'd be in HR pretty fast if you were
yeah,
having these conversations in
I
corporate
know. And like,
America.
this is like HR. So I always assumed, when people would say, well, she's a racist, I'm like, well, maybe she just doesn't want a 13-inch penis. That's entirely possible. Like, S so it is a possibility. But no, I don't even think it was, I think it was a situation where the agents were setting up the performers to sort of ask for more money for each new thing they did. So they would start with only girls, and then their first boy-girl scene would be, X amount of money. Their first interracial in porn is just always involves a black guy. That's what they call it. It doesn't matter. Yeah, it's very
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah.
But so if you're having your first IR scene is what it used to be called, then the girl would ask for more money. Then she would do anal, and that was even more money. And so each thing was sort of a stepping stone. But we've moved away from that, and I'm glad because obviously that's kind of disgusting that you would say, "Hey, I'm charging more because it's a black guy." I mean, it's just, but it was so accepted back then.
Mhm.
Right.
Um, and it's really, I mean, I remember, this is horrifying, and I was trying to find it so I could send it to you guys, but, when I also first started, there was a discount on Black performers for Black History Month.
What?
sent by an agent.
What?
Wait, for Black History Month? A
In
discount?
order to celebrate
You
Black History
mean
Month.
right?
Yes.
Okay,
Wow.
not the other way around.
No.
Yeah, you
discounts.
should charge more for Black
Yeah,
History
exactly.
I mean, exactly. Charge more. And I remember reading it going, this can't be real. I mean, because again, coming from corporate America and it was just so,
How long ago was that?
that would be 2000, I think it happened in 2011 or 12. Again,
That
things
still
were-
seems very
That's-
recent.
oh,
Very
of
recent
course.
for that.
But I'm just
Oh
saying,
my gosh.
yeah. And I remember opening it thinking, this can't be real. And mind you, it wasn't a one of the better agencies. It was sort of one of the crap agencies. Not that it makes it excusable, but and I think, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure that the agent was Black. But maybe I'm wrong.
Okay.
I don't know. But I just remember thinking, I don't understand this. This is so
Yeah, the
bizarre.
taste level, I guess, but
I mean,
who knows?
I guess.
You know, I mean, this is so now we know what we're going to do for MLK Day.
Yeah.
God forbid.
So-
Um,
I have some questions about like, so I saw, like, I looked at your site and, you know, I noticed that, you know, you, well, the movie, the submission of Emma Marks, you have an article about it as well on your site. And it has, it's your pornographic response to 50 Shades of Grey. I'm wondering, you know, just generally speaking, how often here's an interaction of like textual porn, I guess, and the film industry, which in my mind are like two very different spaces. Like I think of visual porn movies as like a male space, male oriented, like male is a consumer, and then this written industry, which is very different. But then you have kind of crossbreeding in spaces like Tumblr, or you used to back when like porn was around. But there was like fan fiction and, you know, people who were into like bands, and they would write pornographic fan fiction about them, and then that got crossbred with weird porn. I mean, it's just an interesting kind of space. But I mean, I have many questions. One is just, would you comment on generally on the effect of 50 Shades of Grey? And then I would also like to know your thoughts on, you know, like girl porn, in the sense of like what I think 13 to like very young kind of girls are doing online on sites like Tumblr.
erotica, you
yeah.
mean?
I mean, would you? I don't know. Some of
What's
it is
the
porn. Some
difference?
of it is straight
Right.
up porn. You know, and they
Like
are
what they're writing?
well. I think it's mostly related to fan fiction and like fan communities, and lots of like, it's almost like it's modern day, you know, those I don't know what you call them, as erotica, I guess, novels that you see.
Oh, you mean like bodice rippers?
Yeah,
right.
Bodice
but
rippers.
It's written. But we should say, I mean, because
it's written, right?
It's, I mean, that's the you know, sort of an article of faith that women respond to, you know, erotic literature. They're less visual. You know,
Yeah.
that's been the assumption for a long time. So yeah, I guess a lot of these girls they're sort of writing stuff. Is there any visual component though? Is there like illustrations, or like is there an anime thing to it, or are they just kind of writing erotic stories?
I think it's mostly stories. I think it's just hosted in lots of like very written forums. But then Tumblr, I was never a Tumblr person, so I can't speak to Tumblr. And I feel bad because now it's a very culturally, like, it's good to be in the know about what happened with Tumblr because it explains so much about the internet or something.
Yeah.
But I didn't do Tumblr. But I think Tumblr was a mix of like textual porn and then like images that they would have, or GIFs or something that they would use to like weave it together. I don't know. Anyway, so that, I don't, what was the question even? But 50 Shades of Grey, and then its effect, and what do you think about this textual porn world?
I mean, the 50 Shades of Grey thing, I think, is very good and very bad. And it was good because it sort of mainstreamed sex in a way that it was okay to explore a fetish that maybe some people would be embarrassed by.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the damage of it was done incorrectly. It was written by somebody who clearly knew nothing about BDSM. And it sort of opened up this world for people to say, okay, I can be a dom, which means I will not honor your boundaries. I will just force you with this, iron fist, and you'll do what I want. And it's very aggressive and very non-consensual. He crossed her boundaries so many times that he was just basically an abusive man. But they painted in this picture of him being this wealthy guy that, has his own jet or whatever. And so suddenly it's acceptable, but it's not acceptable. It's super dangerous. And it did make me nervous for people that are interested in BDSM, especially women, and especially if their dom is a man, because what more vulnerable position can you be in? And I think the one thing they got wrong is that in the BDSM community, the sub is usually the one who has the power. And that is what they got wrong. They made it seem like the dom has all the power and he tells her what to do. And that's completely incorrect. The sub is the one that sets the boundaries and decides what they're consenting to.
Mm-hmm.
So when we did Emma Marks, and we did 4 movies in that series. And it was a bestseller for about 7 or 8 years, which was great. But it definitely went through the way a BDSM relationship should be, with the level of consent. As far as the Tumblr or the visual contextual thing, I mean, I don't think it's harmful that women are writing fan fiction when they're younger, or sexual stories. In fact, I think it's allowing their brains to be more creative and not imposed upon by graphic sexual porn images that are not showing them what real sex is.
Mm-hmm.
I love the idea that women are writing porn. I think that's really great.
Yeah, I mean,
Because they're using their creativity. They're not looking at an image of some gigantic
it's an
thrusting
active.
cock.
It's
But
an
who are
active
they writing it
process.
for? They're writing it for other
communities.
girls.
Yeah, I think it's
But is it
part and
mostly
parcel of the
girls?
fan communities. I think that's how 50 Shades of Grey started.
It did.
I think it was
Twilight.
Yeah.
right. Oh my
It was
gosh, that's
Twilight
right.
fanfiction. Yeah.
Yeah, because the Twilight fandom was huge, super
Mhm.
annoying. I remember them.
Yeah.
But they big fandom, big communities where they're all writing fan fiction all the time and reading fan fiction all the time. And then there was a heavy rated R to NC-17, I guess, component to that. And I think that's where 50 Shades of Grey got her start, the woman who wrote it.
Yeah.
That's
no, go ahead,
good that
Sarah.
they're being creative, but there are elements they're misleading each other to some degree, right? Or they can be.
In what sense?
Well, what you said was the problem with 50 Shades of Grey.
Oh, right. But that was written by an adult. And so, it's one thing, because I know there are a couple fan fictions, like The Kissing Booth, I think was a fan fiction of something, or it was written by like a 13-year-old or something. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that movie, but it began in those, like what you're saying, these blog sites or whatever, these fan fiction sites. And so young writers are getting some attention or whatever and getting movies made. But the 50 Shades was written by a woman who should know better and should at least have done some research on how to accurately portray a relationship that could be extremely harmful if done incorrectly.
Yeah, I always thought it should be called 50 Shades of Green because it's really just about his money. I mean, the whole thing is about how rich he is. It's not has nothing to do with sex at all.
You would never have sex with him or be into this if he wasn't rich.
Right. So, Jacky, why do you think that so many people, especially so many young people, seem to be into BDSM? Do you think that this is just something that has been around, but people either didn't know about it or were afraid to talk about it, or there was shame around it? Or do you think that there's a contagion aspect to this? Because it seems like every other person under 30 is like, into that lifestyle, or at least curious about it.
God, that's interesting. I never really thought about it. And is it that popular? But
Seems like it comes up a lot. I mean, people
Hmm.
talk about how on dating apps, they'll see it referred to a lot. And I don't know. I don't know if they're just messing around, like they think it's just kind of like a hip thing to say.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder. I definitely. I mean, obviously, social contagion is a very real, as we can see in our world today. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it was social contagion, but also a level of people just wanting to either relinquish control or have some measure of control that they don't have in their lives. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I mean, again, it's like you hear about these young people and they're out, maybe it's their first or second encounter with the person sexually, and it immediately gets into this really like advanced level stuff. I mean, listeners are going to be, I'm sure they set their watches to, wonder how long it would take me to ask about choking. But that's something that I don't. It's incredible how common that is, and like teenagers are kind of doing that very early on in their encounters, and it's because they see it in porn, but they don't get
you know,
any pleasure from it. I can't imagine that
I
they
will
would.
say this. So I'm 47, and we had 2 deaths in my high school from auto asphyxiation. So I think that the choking or level of, breathing control isn't new.
Right. I
Two,
don't. But that's auto
like
asphyxiation.
together,
In 4 years, 2 guys.
separate. Oh my god.
So, but
Yeah.
that was guys, right? I mean, I understand that, like, the idea is you cut off oxygen. Like,
Yeah.
if you're a guy, you jerk off and you cut off oxygen,
Yes.
and it's like this incredible thing, and yet you can mess up and die. Like, I get the principle, but and now that you see it in porn a lot, apparently, but now kids are sort of seeing that, and I don't even know that they understand what the mechanism is. Like, they just think it is part. It's like, there used to be the bases, right? It's like it's like the new second base or something.
But maybe you
And they're
just
just
didn't
kind of
know it
going through the
existed
motions.
until like before you just hadn't seen it. Now with porn, you get to about things that you wouldn't have
Yeah.
known
And
about
I
at
mean, and
all.
even beyond that, slapping and hair pulling, and there's a violent element to sexual experimentation that was certainly not around when you and I were coming up, or Jacky, I would,
I
we're
mean,
around the same age.
I mean, I don't know. That's an interesting one because I feel like rough sex has always kind of been around.
Yeah, okay. All right. I
Maybe it's
suppose.
just more
know, though.
formalized.
But
Maybe it's
not
just more explicitly like named in a way that it
Yeah.
wouldn't have
Yeah.
been. Like you wouldn't have put it on your dating profile. You would have maybe.
Why would anybody ever put that on
But they would, I mean,
maybe it's something
yeah.
you tell somebody after you've been in a relationship with them for a very, very, very long time, and they kind of
Yeah.
sit down and you just
Right.
say,
Or
okay,
if
and then
there's
you
a
move on.
person who is into that, who that person is. Like, if there had been somebody at my college, like, oh, this guy is known for this kind of thing.
Oh my god, you guys talked about that? You guys would just be like, this guy.
Sure. Well, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Well, you would write, instead of the shitty media men list, you just wrote it on the bathroom stall.
Oh my
These are the
god.
rapists.
Oh my
Sure.
god.
Yes. Yeah. But I mean, that aside, I don't think it was like part of the regular menu to have these kinds of things. It was a variant. And now it just seems like routine.
Well, I mean, I think the danger is that, when I was growing up and having sex for the first time or just exploring for the first time, I mean, everything was a discovery. And I had watched porn before I had sex, but it wasn't as easily accessible. So, I mean, I see what you're saying here. And I mean, it does sort of take the magic and beauty out of discovering what you like with the person that you care about, hopefully care about. I think I told you this at the Unspeakeasy, Megan, but Sarah, there was a time on set where a girl had a real orgasm, which is very rare in porn, and she yelled "cut" because I'm fairly certain she had never had an orgasm before and was very scared, stunned, nervous, didn't know what was
Aw.
overcoming her. And I think that that might be more the norm for girls today because they watch porn and they see some girl, screaming just because a guy spanked her. I mean, he's not even
Yeah.
touching her clit or anything. I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
they see that. So they're like, oh, okay, it's just, but they actually haven't even touched their body before, learned what they like. I mean, because
Mhm.
they're watching porn and just learning, okay, I scream when I'm just touched.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's very, I mean, and again, this is where I think parents really need to kind of
S
step
I
in
mean,
and
to some it's a tube issue. I mean, it's not just, porn, but this is how people know about things. They don't experience them. First, they watch a YouTube video of somebody doing it or going to a place or what. I mean, it doesn't even have to be about sex, but it's as if
Mhm,
you watch a portrayal of it first
mhm,
and then you get exposed to it.
mhm.
And um, that was always the case to some degree because films were a thing and a big cultural thing, and you would watch a film and you would see people do cool stuff, and then you would want to do it. But I think with the with YouTube and with everybody having like recording themselves on TikTok, is that everything has just it's so visible, and more people are spending more time watching other people doing things, whatever that may be.
Yeah,
Um, and that's their first encounter with that
yeah,
thing, whatever that is, you know. I yeah.
it's so unfortunate.
Yeah, we just need to touch grass. That's what we need to do. But
We really do.
And ourselves,
t-
apparently. So, like,
Yeah,
these girls they're performers, but they've never even. That's incredible.
well,
that's
Like,
I
incredible.
mean, I'm sure that some of them obviously have and they know, but yeah, I mean, and again, our business is not the business of them experiencing pleasure. It's
Right.
really doing something for an audience.
Mhm.
Uh, so I sometimes wonder, what would that be like to just have somebody inside me with no aim of pleasure for me? Like, it just seems like such a foreign notion that I can't imagine what that does to somebody's brain,
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm.
and
Well, so speaking of what this does to people's brains, you are, I know, in school now to be a therapist, and you specifically want to work with sex workers. Can you tell us what that's like?
yeah, I mean, just over the course of, again, I think I was very naive when I started in porn and I was like, oh, everybody's great. Nobody does drugs and that, because I was only working with people that maybe weren't addicts or, whatever. And that's not to say that the majority of people are addicts or anything like that. But there is a lot of mental health issues. I mean, I think it was last year or in the last couple years, we've lost several people to suicide.
Oh no.
Um, and people that definitely presented a very happy, I'm okay face and
Mm.
then ended up taking their own lives. And I mean, of the sex workers that I've talked to that have been in therapy, um, the complaint is always the same. It's that the therapist tries to talk them out of their career, which a lot of them don't want to leave it because they're making enough money to take care of their families, or they do like it. They like the money. They like whatever it is. They can like their jobs, but therapists often are like, well, no sane person would like this job. Or they'll say, let's talk about, your choice to do porn as a result of trauma. And a lot of them say that, porn saved them. And a lot of them will say that. And I do believe them because it got them out of some bad situations. A lot of them, it forced them to be sober. So I think they feel very alone in that therapists don't understand sex workers or come at it from a very anti porn sex work aspect. And I wouldn't because, oh, I work in it. So
Mm.
I know.
Mhm.
So, what's social work school like?
And how is it the same as working in porn?
Yeah.
Compare and contrast.
Uh, Compare and contrast isn't even possible. You know what's funny is, when I was in undergrad, I was in school in the 90s, and I just think it's so eye-opening now, because there's such a lack of critical thinking in grad school. And there's one way to think, and that's it. And I've been called a bigot in class before, and I've been attacked um, by somebody who claims to champion sex work, but then they called me a bigot about something I said about sex work. And it's just it's fascinating and scary, but I refuse to do what they want me or to vocalize and say what they want me to say. I say what I think, and
Mhm.
I don't care.
All right. Spoken like a true member of the Unspeakeasy. Wow, we could talk all day. Sarah, is there anything more?
Yeah, nothing.
Sarah, you're
Do you
I
have any
feel like there's
questions
so
for us,
I
Jacky?
feel like I have a lot. We could, but we can't keep going on.
I mean, what do you think? Okay, actually, well, let's
Wait. I do have one more.
Yeah,
I want to talk about AI.
that's what I was going to ask too.
Good,
Yes,
good.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
no. Okay.
Right. So where to begin? I mean, are we all going to have AI partners in 5 years or 5 minutes?
Megan's looking forward to it. She's looking forward to replacing me with
Oh yeah,
Sarah AI
podcast partners for sure.
Yeah.
But other kinds of partners as well.
You know, I'm actually really terrified, if I'm being honest. Not even just from the fact that I think it can completely disrupt and destroy, my industry, but politics, everything. I mean, you already can't trust the media, but now more than ever, we're not going to be able to trust really anything.
Mhm.
And, I was telling Megan before Brett Cooper had uh, a little clip on women dating AI voices, I guess. I don't even know what it is. It's an AI boyfriend, and you can call or talk to the boyfriend, and he'll just say, and he has a very sexy voice, and he kind of says whatever you want to hear. And like a lot of women were jumping on this is the greatest thing ever. And so, Megan had said, well, are they having sex? And I was like, I don't even know if they care about sex.
Yeah.
Uh,
I've often thought that AI boyfriends are more dangerous than AI girlfriends, because at least AI girlfriends aren't physically real, but AI boyfriends won't even need to be, so long as
no,
they can
say the
evoke a
right.
certain kind of feeling. And girls are very good at creating, fictional, social universes in the first
Yeah,
place.
absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. And I wonder,
Exactly.
how do performers feel about this? Like, in the sense that
Oh,
you can take, there's so many images and videos of them out there, you can make them do anything now.
oh, absolutely. I mean, it was the first time in my career um of 13 years that this year a performer was looking at the fine print of the contract, a MILF, very, very, the
Mhm.
MILFs are so
She
like,
was a lawyer
no,
before she
no,
decided. Yeah.
probably. And she said, I'm not signing this. And I was like, what? And apparently there was something in there that said that they could use her likeness or what, it's the standard contract for any sort of media where it's like in perpetuity, blah, 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 your likeness. And she was saying that she had gotten screwed by AI stuff, and it's making them say things that they aren't saying is more of the issue than the sex acts, because a lot of them are doing some crazy sex acts. But if it's saying, hey, I'm gonna meet me at whatever, I'll fuck any of you at the AVN show. I mean, it's just anything could be said now.
Mm-hmm.
And who's to know what can be believed and what can't? And I know that they were making like one studio was making sex dolls without people's consent. I mean, there was just a whole lot of craziness happening. So I have no idea what this means for our future, just not just porn, but anything. And it's really absolutely terrifying,
Mm-hmm.
because how are we going to trust the truth of anything?
Anything. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Nothing.
Yeah. All right. Well, anything else?
On that episode,
Hugo is saying that it's
on that, yeah.
time for his
this
lunch.
little log.
There he is. Oh, sorry.
There he is. Look at this
Very
slug.
glad He's very slobbery. Oh yeah, you met Hugo.
I did. He's the best.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. This has been fascinating, and I really appreciate your
Sure.
candor and your transparency and your willingness to talk about all this. It's not
Fascinating. Yeah.
not a world I know anything about.
And
Although
now we're
I
so
know a little more.
educated.
Yes. Now we know everything.
Mm-hmm.
What's the, I mean, let's just leave it here. Like, what would you say to parents? Like, what is the best way to keep your kids from just falling down this rabbit hole and being affected by this in pretty profound ways?
I mean, I think parents can't be afraid to talk about to their kids about sex, and I think that that's still sort of a scary taboo thing for a lot of parents. But I think it's important that they talk about how, just like when we watch violent movies of somebody's head getting blown off, it's not real. And even though real people are having sex in porn, it's not done for their personal pleasure. It's done
Mm-hmm.
solely for entertainment for the person watching it. And
Yeah.
it's not real. I mean,
Yeah.
in the
That's the
sense of
most
it's not
important
how real
lesson.
sex
Like that, it's
happens.
not real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Wow.
thank you, Jackie.
Thank you
This
so
is
much.
amazing.
Of course,
Yeah.
you guys.
It's
Absolutely.
been great. Yes. And good luck in school, and keep up the good work.
I'm gonna keep fighting the good fight, guys.
Yeah. All right.
All right,
Thank you.
guys. Bye.
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 You have reached the end of the episode, which probably means you like our content. Why don't you join our Substack right now? You can become a paying subscriber at a specialplace.substack.com. You can join our listener community, leave comments, interact with everybody. We'll see you in there. It is totally worth it. So please join us, a specialplace.substack.com. And thanks for listening.